So let's get after a dream. AL West, Astros again. And I kind of am sick of talking about the Houston Astros. Of course, I'm a little bitter, liking a team inside this division, but they are favorites, of course, to win this division. And as you see, 95.5 the wins, and they are favorites to win the division at -185, AL pennant +300, World Series at +650. Quan, do you have the overall AL West, the picture here? We can see the gap between Houston and one of the worst teams in baseball, the Oakland Athletics. We have the Halos, of course, the Texas Rangers, who have made noise in the offseason over the past couple of years, and then the Seattle Mariners, who you and I touched on last week as a team that we like the over on their win total, and we like the direction that they are headed. But let's just really dive into maybe the Astros here overall as a team. What do you think of the offseason? Losing Verlander, is there a better player to bring into your team than Jose Abreu? I feel like it's just a perfect match for, even at his age, what he can bring and what this Astros team is made of.
No, it actually is the perfect fit, right? Like we're a little unsure if his power is starting to decline at his age, which is totally normal. But this is a great park for him, better than Chicago, and it's a great lineup for him. And at the very least, we know he's still going to get on base at a high percentage. Now, you mentioned they lost Verlander, who did throw great 175 innings or something like that for them last year. But this team is incredibly deep at pitcher, right? They're either going to have the rookie Hunter Brown either in the fifth spot or maybe Urquidy taking that spot. But I mean, again, they'll use both throughout the season. Not too worried about their pitching staff, and they're going to have their bullpen's going to be great once again, and they'll probably have a couple guys they can bring up from the minors to kind of fill in the roles of those that get hurt. And one guy that I brought up last week is a guy that I absolutely love is Kyle Tucker. Now I know there's just so many stars on the team. It's hard to bet him for MVP. Like let's just say if Yordan played for the Mariners or another team, I think it would actually put you could actually bet Tucker to win MVP. It's just kind of hard with just so many stars on that team. But yeah, it's really hard not to think that they're going to win the division once again.
Man, it's just year after year after year. I know they had a lot of dud seasons. Like they did. They had 3 or 4 in a row or out of a 5 or 6 year span where they lost over 100 games. Like they went through – there it is there. We went through the process of losing all those games and then getting all the picks and then seeing the talent that they have. The Astros -185, 95.5. The Mariners 87.5, +350 to win the division. And the longer shots here, Texas and LA. You're probably not getting behind Texas or LA, but has Seattle closed the gap here against the Astros in your opinion?
I think they have a little bit, and really what I'm looking forward to watching with the Seattle team, they got Teoscar from the Blue Jays, but I'm curious to see Luis Castillo pitch in Seattle over a full season. He went from one of the worst, one of the bigger hitter parks in baseball, the best for hitters in Great American Ballpark, to Seattle, which is a solid place for him. I was looking at the park factors a couple days ago, and I know he only made 5 starts in Seattle last year, but he had a FIP of, I want to say, below 2 and strikeouts minus walks of 30%.
That's phenomenal.
So I mean, it's beyond elite. Could have a career year, and he's another guy I was kind of looking at. We were talking about his Cy Young at 18 to 19 to 1. I don't love, I don't have very many futures bets. I don't really like spraying those boards with just there's so much uncertainty. But he's one of those guys where after I looked at the board, I'm like, yeah, I don't really have any bets here, but he's one that I'm still kind of thinking about. I'm like, man, 18 to 1, 19 to 1, like decent value there. Might have to sprinkle that eventually.
Really good pitcher. And to your point, when he went to Seattle, he was just, the ballpark plays into a lot of pitchers there, but also just you could really see the upside. We'll get into Seattle a little bit more. We also have, I know you're not a big fantasy player, but I want to just show you take care of the bets, and I'll kind of do a little bit of a fantasy spin in here as well. Quan, we do have a board of all the Astros and where they're going in high stakes leagues, NFBC, over the last 2 months. This is a large sample of drafts, people putting their hard-earned bucks. For example, the difference between Houston and Oakland, the Athletics don't have a player going inside the top 200 picks. Look at this. There's 9 players here for the Astros inside a $115. How about Jeremy Pena, shortstop 14? He's the 14th shortstop off the board. He's that good. And the shortstop position is deep, but that's a really good pick, I think. If you miss out on a few shortstops that go off the board. You mentioned Tucker Tucker is outfielder 4. So you see I have the number next to the position. So outfielder 4 off the board, an ADP of 6. Yordan Alvarez, who's dealing with a hand contusion right now, outfielder 5, ADP of 9. So 2 Astros going inside the top 10 picks, and on average, a first round for both of these guys. Jose Altuve is the first second baseman off the board, and even at age 32, pushing 33, he's still a guy that I expect to hit 270 and probably chip in with double-digit stolen bases and 20-plus homers. Cristian Javier, I'm just a sucker for this guy. Alex Bregman, Ryan Presley is the 7th closer off the board on average. And just deep, right? Urquidy's not even on this board in the season that he had. And Framber Valdez down the board as the 24th pitcher taken. Jose Abreu, nothing but contact, doesn't strike out. That's what you can say about the entire Astros lineup. Altuve at the top, Brantley, Bregman, Alvarez, Abreu, Tucker. Will Tucker hit 6th? As good as Tucker is, this guy's hitting 6th. Pena hitting 7th. Absolutely just crazy. And I put Hunter Brown on the board, despite guys like Luis Garcia and Jose Urquidy going ahead of Hunter Brown. Lance McCullers, I'd like him dream when he plays. I'm not trying to be hard on this guy, but honestly, health is a major concern. And that's probably the path to Hunter Brown getting inside this rotation. If McCullers can't stay healthy, we may see Hunter Brown kind of eclipse 150 innings.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'd have to look at more of what his usage was last year just to kind of project how many innings he'll throw this year. But you nailed it, man. They're going to get, innings from all those guys. They'll need them. It's interesting to see Framber closer to the 100 mark. He threw 27 straight quality starts last year or something like that, breaking an MLB record. And I'm with you. I know Javier was one of the guys that you and I both looked to last year once they moved him into the rotation. We played a bunch of his K props, and hopefully we'll find some value on him again this season.
I don't think there's a player here that you should avoid in fantasy drafts, honestly. Tucker is a guy that, you touched on that you like, and he's a guy that is going to chip in with probably 50 combined homers and stolen bases. He's going to hit 270 at least. Altuve is maybe the guy for me that I would avoid at this point. I think he's a fine player. The second base position isn't fantastic. I just don't want to spend a top 30 pick roughly on Altuve. I'm probably taking an outfielder at that point in my drafts, but I like Javier, even though he's bumping up the board here at, roughly pitcher 19. Over the last 4 weeks, we saw 148 innings from him, 148 and 2/3. He struck out 194 guys. He's got electric stuff, 11.74 K per 9, and his strikeout percentage was 33.2%. This is very, very strong stuff. I think Presley is fine. Bregman, I think, is a little bit of a discount there as the 7th third baseman off the board on average. And, you mentioned Valdez and the run that he had last year as well. What do we think of Pena, Jeremy Pena? And I know you made a comment there, the triceps. It absolutely looks like a monster, but this player was amazing from start to finish last year as a rookie.
I mean, he was great. Got off to a great start and then finished the season really strong. I was reading a little bit that he might have gone through a little bit of slump, might have been more mechanics related and something he cleaned up towards the end of the year. But it's really dumb when we look at this lineup or even that board, looking at all these Yordan and Tucker are legitimately 2 of the best hitters in baseball, right? And then you can also name 3 or 4 all-stars in the rest of their lineups. It's just really silly. And every time somebody posts a picture of Pena's biceps on Twitter, I can't help but just look. And it's just insane. I mean, you could obviously say he's in the best shape of his life, but he's always in this great of shape. It's just silly.
Yeah, it is. 25 years old. And I mean, to give you 22 homers and 11 stolen bases last year, at times hitting near the top of the order, but the lineup being so stacked. And I'm sure there'll be times where Brantley won't be in that 2 spot, and maybe they'll have him in that 2 spot. But
yeah, I kind of think Dusty will keep Tucker in the 5th or 6th spot. I was looking at, it's not obviously predictive, but he will come on with more runners on base, and his RBIs are just so much greater out of, at the bottom of the lineup. And I know that's something Dusty's probably looking at. So I assume we'll continue to see Tucker in that 6th spot.
Check out all Vlad's projections. They're absolutely on point over at FTN Fantasy. We have links inside of the description of this video. His rankings from a high stakes standpoint of fantasy football, baseball standpoint, also, underdog fantasy for best ball. And he's got projections and things like that. But all the projections over at Fangraphs have Pena for at least 18 homers. Most have him for 20, double-digit stolen bases. The average slightly low. They got him as a 250 hitter, but I think he can be a little bit better than that. As you mentioned, some struggles at points and finished as a 253 hitter, but all that protection in the lineup as well. Oh man, the Astros again. It's the Astros world. We're just living in it. I can't imagine them not making noise again. Dream, winning the World Series last year, and I 95.5 is a very high total. I'm not totally into grabbing those, but they're probably a 100-win team, and I think that they are going to win the division. And plus 650 is not really worth your time, but this is a team that's definitely going to be there at the end of the day.